of basal ganglia and its significance in psychiatry. Marks 10. Answer. Introduction. The basal ganglia (BG) are a group of subcortical nuclei in the brain that play crucial roles in coordinating motor control, cognition, and behavior. The BG are primarily involved in processing and relaying information from various brain regions to control voluntary motor movements and influence decision-making, emotions, and learning, which are key areas of interest in psychiatry. Functional neuroanatomy of basal ganglia key components. The basal ganglia consist of several interconnected structures, each with unique functions, caudate nucleus, involved in learning, memory, and processing of feedback. It plays a role in cognitive control and response inhibition, relevant in OCD and schizophrenia. Putamen, associated with motor skills and sensory-motor integration, modulating the strength of motor responses. Globus pallidus, internal and external, acts as a major output nucleus, relaying signals from the basal ganglia to the thalamus and cortex. Subthalamic nucleus modulates output of the globus pallidus and substantia nigra, affecting motor and cognitive processes. Substantia nigra divided into pars compacta dopamine production and pars reticulata. The dopamine pathway here is essential for reward processing, motivation, and motor functions. Functional circuits of the basal ganglia direct pathway facilitates motor and cognitive processes by stimulating thalamic output, promoting movement and desired behaviors. Dysfunction in this pathway can lead to hypokinetic disorders, e.g. Parkinson's disease. Indirect pathway inhibits competing motor and cognitive signals to prevent unwanted actions. Overactivity here is associated with hyperkinetic disorders like Huntington's disease. Hyperdirect pathway rapidly suppresses motor activities, thought to play a role in inhibiting impulsive behaviors with implications in impulse control disorders. Role of neurotransmitters in basal ganglia functioning. Dopamine, central to reward processing, motivation, and the control of movement. Dopamine imbalances are implicated in schizophrenia, positive symptoms like hallucinations, Parkinson's disease, and mood disorders. GABA functions as an inhibitory neurotransmitter in the BG, balancing excitatory inputs and maintaining stable motor output. Glutamate, the primary excitatory neurotransmitter, facilitating communication between the cortex and BG, essential for cognitive and motor functions. Significance of basal ganglia in psychiatry. 1. Schizophrenia. The dopamine hypothesis of schizophrenia involves dopaminergic dysregulation in the basal ganglia, particularly in the striatum, contributing to positive symptoms like hallucinations and delusions. 2. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. Alterations in the corticostriato-thalamo-cortical CSTC loop are linked to repetitive behaviors and compulsions seen in OCD. 3. Mood disorders. Dysfunctions in BG circuits are associated with anhedonia and motivation deficits seen in depression. 4. Addiction. The reward pathway involving dopamine in the basal ganglia is crucial in addiction. Addiction. The reward pathway involving dopamine in the basal ganglia is crucial in addiction. Substance use disorders affect the mesolimbic pathway, leading to compulsive drug-seeking behaviors. 5. Movement disorders. Basal ganglia pathology is central in conditions like Parkinson's hypokinetic disorder and Huntington's disease hyperkinetic disorder, where psychiatric symptoms often co-occur. Conclusion. The basal ganglia serve as a critical neural hub, modulating motor and cognitive functions. Its connections with cortical and limbic regions underscore its importance in psychiatric conditions, especially those involving movement, mood, and thought regulation. Understanding BG pathways enhances insight into the neurobiological underpinnings of various psychiatric and neurological disorders, aiding in developing targeted therapies. Justification. A thorough understanding is demonstrated, integrating BG anatomy, functional circuits, and psychiatric relevance. An additional discussion of basal ganglia's emerging role in neuropsychiatric treatments, e.g. deep brain stimulation, could enhance completeness. Question 2. Answer in brief about the role of glutamate in psychiatry. Marks 10. Answer. Introduction. Glutamate is the primary excitatory neurotransmitter in the central nervous system CNS and plays a crucial role in neuronal communication, synaptic plasticity, and neurodevelopment. Its function in psychiatry is increasingly recognized, particularly in disorders like schizophrenia, depression, and neurodegenerative diseases. Basic functions of glutamate: excitatory neurotransmitter. Glutamate mediates most excitatory synaptic transmission in the brain, essential for learning, memory, and cognitive functions. Synaptic plasticity. Glutamate plays a key role in long-term potentiation LTP, a process underlying memory formation and learning. Neurodevelopment. It is critical in neuronal growth and differentiation, especially during early brain development. Glutamate receptors. 1. Ionotropic receptors, NMDA receptors, essential for synaptic plasticity and memory formation. They are implicated in cognitive functions and are a focus in schizophrenia research. AMPA receptors, fast excitatory neurotransmission, involved in learning and memory. Dysregulation can contribute to mood and cognitive disorders. KNAT receptors, less understood but contribute to excitatory transmission in the CNS. 1. Metabotropic receptors, mGlurs. These G-protein coupled receptors modulate neurotransmission indirectly and are involved in various functions, from neuroprotection to modulating synaptic plasticity. mGlurs are targets for novel treatments in anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia. Role of glutamate in psychiatric disorders. 1. Schizophrenia. NMDA hypofunction hypothesis. Reduced NMDA receptor function, particularly in the prefrontal cortex, is linked to negative symptoms and cognitive deficits in schizophrenia. Dysregulation of glutamate pathways, hyperactive glutamatergic transmission in the cortex striatum thalamus pathway may contribute to psychotic symptoms. Treatment implications. NMDA receptor modulators like glycine or D-cycloserine are being investigated as adjunct treatments. 1. Mood disorders, depression, glutamate dysregulation, particularly excessive glutamatergic activity, is observed in depression. Ketamine, an NMDA antagonist, rapidly reduces depressive symptoms, highlighting the importance of glutamate in mood regulation. Bipolar disorder. Evidence suggests glutamate dysregulation may contribute to mood instability, and glutamate modulating agents are under investigation. 1. Anxiety disorders. Anxiety-related alterations in glutamate transmission are noted, especially in regions like the amygdala. Targeting specific mGlurs may offer therapeutic options in anxiety disorders. Neurodegenerative disorders, e.g., Alzheimer's disease, excitotoxicity, chronic overstimulation of glutamate receptors leads to excitotoxicity, contributing to neurodegeneration. Drugs like memantine, an NMDA antagonist, are used to manage cognitive symptoms in Alzheimer's disease. Novel therapeutic approaches targeting glutamate, ketamine, and esketamine, rapid-acting antidepressants, effective into treatment-resistant depression by modulating NMDA receptors. mGlur modulators. Selective modulation of mGlurs, e.g., mGlur2 agonists, shows promise in managing schizophrenia and mood disorders. Glycine transport inhibitors, targeting glycine as a coagonist for NMDA receptors in schizophrenia. Conclusion. Glutamate's role in psychiatric disorders spans across multiple domains, including schizophrenia, mood, anxiety, and neurodegenerative conditions. Its modulation offers new therapeutic avenues, especially for treatment-resistant cases, positioning glutamate as a critical target in the future of psychopharmacology. Justification. This answer covers essential functions, glutamate receptor types, and their psychiatric relevance. Further details on the molecular mechanisms of drugs like ketamine or newer agents could enhance understanding. Question 3. What is intelligence? Describe the various theories of intelligence. Marks. 10. Answer. Definition of intelligence. Intelligence is a complex mental ability involving reasoning, problem-solving, planning, abstract thinking, learning from experience, and adapting to new situations. It reflects both cognitive processing efficiency and adaptability, impacting an individual's ability to acquire and apply knowledge. Theories of intelligence. 1. Spearman's two-factor theory, general intelligence G. Spearman proposed a single underlying G factor, representing general cognitive ability, which influences performance across various tasks. Specific abilities S. Additionally, task-specific abilities contribute to performance on specific tasks. 1. Thurstone's primary mental abilities. Thurstone argued that intelligence is not a single factor but consists of multiple primary mental abilities such as verbal comprehension, numerical ability, spatial relations, memory, reasoning, and perceptual speed. This theory suggested a more multifaceted view of cognitive abilities. 1. Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences: linguistic intelligence, language skills, logical mathematical intelligence, analytical and mathematical skills, spatial intelligence, ability to visualize spatial relations, musical, bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and naturalistic intelligences. Gardner proposed that intelligence encompasses several distinct types rather than a single dimension. Key intelligences include. This theory emphasizes that different types of intelligence can be relatively independent of each other. 1. Sternberg's triarchic theory: analytical intelligence, problem solving, and logical reasoning. Creative intelligence: ability to deal with novel situations and generate new ideas. Practical intelligence: street smarts or real-world skills, enabling adaptation to one's environment. Sternberg suggested intelligence involves three aspects. 1. Cattell-Horn-Carroll CHC theory: fluid intelligence GF, problem solving in novel situations, not dependent on prior knowledge. Crystallized intelligence GC, knowledge gained from experience and education. Other factors like short-term memory, processing speed, and visual spatial processing also contribute to this comprehensive model. The CHC model synthesizes several theories and divides intelligence into 1. Emotional intelligence. EI, proposed by Goldman. EI emphasizes the ability to perceive, understand, and manage emotions in oneself and others. EI is linked to interpersonal skills, self-regulation, and empathy, and is considered critical in social functioning and mental health. Conclusion: intelligence is a multifaceted construct with varying theories contributing unique perspectives. From Spearman's single factor to Gardner's multiple intelligences and Sternberg's triarchic theory, these frameworks offer insights into cognitive abilities and applications. Understanding intelligence theories aids in designing assessments and interventions suited to diverse abilities. Justification covers definitions and major theories well, though expanding on practical implications of each theory in educational and clinical settings could enrich the answer. Question 4. Write in brief about epigenetics in psychiatry. Marks 10. Answer: Introduction. Epigenetics refers to heritable changes in gene expression that do not involve alterations in the DNA sequence. These modifications play a critical role in the regulation of genes, particularly those associated with brain development, synaptic function, and stress responses, which are highly relevant in psychiatric disorders. Epigenetic mechanisms. 1. DNA methylation process: addition of a methyl group to cytosine bases, typically reducing gene expression. Relevance: altered DNA methylation patterns are observed in major depressive disorder, schizophrenia, and PTSD. For instance, hypermethylation in genes linked to serotonin transporters can influence mood regulation. 1. Histone modification process: chemical modifications, e.g. acetylation, methylation on histone proteins around which DNA is wrapped, impacting the accessibility of DNA for transcription. Relevance: histone acetylation typically increases gene expression, whereas deacetylation suppresses it. Histone modifications are associated with memory formation, stress resilience, and emotional regulation, all of which are implicated in PTSD, schizophrenia, and addiction. 1. Non-coding RNAs, e.g. microRNAs, function. These small RNA molecules regulate gene expression post-transcriptionally by binding to mRNA, inhibiting translation. Relevance: dysregulated microRNAs are associated with neurodevelopmental disorders like autism and schizophrenia. For example, alterations in specific microRNAs have been found in the prefrontal cortex of individuals with bipolar disorder. Role of epigenetics in psychiatric disorders. 1. Schizophrenia. Epigenetic dysregulation in dopamine and glutamate pathways can impact synaptic function. DNA methylation changes in genes like relin are linked to schizophrenia. 1. Depression. Chronic stress can lead to DNA methylation changes in genes associated with the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis. Studies show hypermethylation of glucocorticoid receptor genes in individuals with depression, influencing stress response and mood regulation. 1. Post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD. Trauma can induce epigenetic changes that modify stress response genes. For instance, altered DNA methylation of FKBP5, a stress regulatory gene, is linked to PTSD vulnerability. 1. Bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder shows alterations in histone acetylation patterns, particularly affecting mood regulation genes. Dysregulated epigenetic mechanisms are hypothesized to contribute to mood instability. 1. Addiction. Drug exposure leads to epigenetic modifications in reward-related pathways, potentially contributing to long-term changes in craving and compulsive drug-seeking behaviors. Environmental influence and epigenetics. Early life stress, adverse childhood experiences are linked to epigenetic changes that increase vulnerability to mental illness. Stress-related epigenetic marks may alter HPA axis regulation, impacting emotional and stress responses. Lifestyle factors, diet, physical activity, and environmental toxins can also influence epigenetic patterns, potentially modifying risk for psychiatric disorders. Therapeutic implications. 1. Epigenetic drugs. Histone deacetylase inhibitors and DNA methyltransferase inhibitors are being investigated as potential treatments for conditions like PTSD and schizophrenia, targeting abnormal epigenetic patterns. 2. Psychotherapy and lifestyle interventions. These can impact epigenetic regulation, suggesting potential for non-pharmacological treatments to influence gene expression in a beneficial way. Conclusion. Epigenetics provides a bridge between genetic predispositions and environmental influences in psychiatry, offering insights into how experiences shape vulnerability to mental illness. It holds promise for developing novel therapeutics that can target the epigenome to manage psychiatric disorders. Justification. Thorough coverage of epigenetic mechanisms and their roles in psychiatric disorders. Further elaboration on the challenges and future directions in epigenetic research would enhance the completeness. Question 5. Write a note on the novel neurotransmitters and their relevance in psychiatry. Marks 10. Answer. Introduction novel. Neurotransmitters refer to neurotransmitters beyond the classical ones, e.g. dopamine, serotonin, that have more recently been identified as having significant roles in modulating mood, cognition, and behavior. Examples include endocannabinoids, orexin, nitric oxide, and neuropeptides, which are increasingly recognized for their relevance in psychiatric research and therapeutics. Novel neurotransmitters in psychiatry. 1. Endocannabinoids, e.g. anandamide 2-AG function, act on cannabinoid receptors CB1, CB2, modulating synaptic plasticity, pain, and appetite. Relevance. Endocannabinoid dysfunction is linked to anxiety, depression, PTSD, and psychosis. Cannabinoid-based treatments, including cannabidiol CBD, are being explored for therapeutic use in these conditions. 1. Orexin hypocretin function. Orexin neurons, primarily located in the hypothalamus, regulate arousal, wakefulness, and appetite. Relevance. Orexin dysregulation is implicated in sleep-wake disorders, particularly narcolepsy, and is being explored in mood and anxiety disorders. Orexin antagonists are used for insomnia and are under study for mood stabilization. 1. Nitric oxide, NO function. A gaseous neurotransmitter that diffuses across cell membranes, involved in vasodilation, learning, and memory. Relevance. Abnormal nitric oxide signaling is implicated in neuroinflammation and neurodegenerative diseases. Altered NO levels are observed in schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, with potential as a therapeutic target for neuroinflammation. 1. Neuropeptide Y NPY function modulates stress response, anxiety, and feeding behavior. Relevance: low NPY levels are associated with heightened stress responses and anxiety. Research on NPY analogs is ongoing for PTSD, as it is known to promote resilience against stress. 1. Galanin function, involved in modulation of mood, sleep, and appetite through its action on galanin receptors GALR1, GALR2. Relevance: galanin dysregulation is linked to depression and anxiety disorders. Studies on galanin receptor agonists are underway to develop new antidepressant therapies. 1. Histamine function. Histamine plays a role in wakefulness, feeding, and thermal regulation. Relevance: H1 and H3 receptor antagonists are used in psychiatric treatment to modulate wakefulness and sedation. Histamine pathways are also linked to schizophrenia and ADHD. 1. Kynurenine pathway metabolites function. Metabolites of tryptophan metabolism, including kynurenic acid, influence NMDA receptor function and immune modulation. Relevance: altered kynurenine pathway is associated with depression and schizophrenia. Targeting this pathway may help modulate neuroinflammation and glutamate signaling in these conditions. Clinical applications and research implications: targeted therapies. Novel neurotransmitters offer new avenues for treatment-resistant conditions like PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Biomarkers: some novel neurotransmitters may serve as biomarkers, aiding in diagnosis and treatment response monitoring. Therapeutic innovation: research on these neurotransmitters holds promise for drugs with fewer side effects as they target specific pathways. Conclusion: novel neurotransmitters have expanded our understanding of brain function and mental health. Their roles in modulating stress, cognition, and mood suggest they may provide innovative treatment targets, particularly for disorders where traditional monoamine-based treatments fall short. Justification: covers the main novel neurotransmitters and their psychiatric relevance, including recent findings or specific clinical trials would add depth to the answer. Question 6. Define personality. Briefly discuss the stages of psychosocial development of personality by Erik Erikson. Marks 10. Answer. Definition of personality. Personality is the unique set of psychological traits, behaviors, and patterns that define an individual's consistent ways of thinking, feeling, and acting across different situations. Personality encompasses enduring characteristics that differentiate one person from another and is shaped by both genetic and environmental factors, particularly social interactions. Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. Erik Erikson proposed a model of personality development that spans the entire lifespan, identifying 8 psychosocial stages, each marked by a central conflict. Successful resolution of each stage's conflict leads to the development of a positive psychological quality, whereas failure to resolve conflicts can result in psychosocial difficulties. Trust against mistrust. Birth to 1 year. Conflict. Developing trust in caregivers to provide consistent care and affection. Outcome. Success leads to the virtue of hope. Failure results in mistrust and fear. 1. Autonomy against shame and doubt 1 to 3 years. Conflict. Gaining a sense of personal control over physical skills and a sense of independence. Outcome. Success fosters willpower. Over-criticism or lack of support can lead to shame and doubt in one's abilities. 1. Initiative against guilt 3 to 6 years. Conflict, asserting power and control through directing play and other social interactions. Outcome. Success leads to the virtue of purpose. Failure results in guilt over self-initiated activities. Industry against inferiority 6 to 12 years. Conflict, developing competence in academic and social skills, aiming for approval. Outcome. Success results in a sense of competence. Difficulty can lead to feelings of inferiority and lack of self-worth. 1. Identity against role confusion. Adolescence 12 to 18 years. Conflict, establishing a personal identity and direction in life. Outcome. Success results in fidelity and a coherent identity. Failure leads to role confusion and instability in self-concept. 1. Intimacy against isolation. Young adulthood, 18 to 40 years. Conflict, forming intimate, loving relationships with others. Outcome: success leads to the virtue of love. Failure results in isolation and loneliness. 1. Generativity against stagnation, middle adulthood, 40 to 65 years. Conflict: contributing to society and helping to guide future generations. Outcome: success results in care for others. Failure leads to stagnation and self-absorption. 1. Integrity against despair. Older adulthood, 65 plus years. Conflict: reflecting on life with a sense of fulfillment or regret. Outcome: success leads to wisdom and acceptance of life. Failure results in despair and dissatisfaction. Significance in psychiatry: Erikson's theory emphasizes the role of social factors in personality development, helping explain personality disorders, identity crises, and relationship difficulties. In clinical settings, understanding unresolved conflicts from Erikson's stages can aid in psychotherapy, helping individuals address and overcome psychosocial challenges. Conclusion: Erikson's psychosocial stages provide a valuable framework for understanding personality development through social and psychological conflicts. Resolving these conflicts successfully enhances psychological resilience and well-being, while unresolved conflicts may underlie various psychiatric conditions. Justification: the answer is comprehensive.